I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. 73 years carrying this family on my shoulders. 73 years giving it my all. And this is how they repay me. Mom, you stay at the farm. Someone has to look after the garden, Christopher told me this morning with that fake smile he inherited from his wife. Lauren was standing there in her new red dress, looking at me as if I were just another employee. And her mother, Patricia, with those expensive sunglasses, checking her phone as if I didn't exist. It's only for a week, Mrs. Barbara. You understand? She murmured without looking up. Only for a week, as if planting and watering were a game, as if these 73 years had been for nothing. I watched them load their suitcases into the car, suitcases filled with clothes I had washed and ironed, towels I had folded, shoes I had cleaned. They were leaving for the coast to spend the money this land produces, while I stay here under the burning sun with my hands in the soil they believe belongs to them. The farm had never seemed so quiet as when their car disappeared down the gravel road, the same road where John and I used to walk every evening after dinner. John, my late husband, had built this farm from nothing 50 years ago. His hands had touched every inch of this property, just as mine had. We'll create something that will last for generations, he'd said the day we signed the mortgage papers. Back then, we had nothing but dreams and calloused hands. I walked back into the kitchen, the yellow walls I'd painted 10 years ago now silent witnesses to everything I'd endured. The wooden table where Christopher had done his homework, where he'd announced his engagement to Lauren, where he'd gradually stopped looking me in the eye. The phone's shrill ring broke the silence. Hello, I answered, my voice echoing in the empty house. Mrs. Williams, this is Sarah Henderson from First National Bank. My heart began to flutter. Sarah had been our family banker for 20 years. She'd helped us through the drought of '95 when we almost lost everything. She'd arranged John's life insurance after his heart attack. Hello, Sarah, is everything all right? There was hesitation in her voice. Mrs. Williams, we need to confirm some urgent transactions. Your son, Christopher, attempted to make a transfer of $50,000 this morning, and there are also attempts to change the ownership on several accounts. The kitchen suddenly felt very cold despite the summer heat. $50,000, what do you mean? Since you are the primary account holder, we need your authorization. $50,000, the money we had saved from selling the cattle last month. The money for fixing the leaking roof, for my blood pressure medicine, for ensuring this farm continued to produce. My hands gripped the phone tighter. I don't authorize anything. Block everything right now. Are you sure? Mrs. Williams, Christopher mentioned it was a family emergency. I'm sure. My voice came out stronger than I expected. And I want you to flag any future attempts. After hanging up, I stood frozen in the kitchen where I had prepared thousands of meals for a family that now saw me as a nuisance. Through the window, I could see the old oak tree John had planted when Christopher was born. This tree will grow with him, he'd said, strong and tall. The tree had kept its promise. Our son hadn't. I made myself a cup of tea and sat on the porch rocker, trying to make sense of what was happening. The farm stretched out before me, the vegetable garden I tended daily, the chicken coop John had built, the fields that had fed our family for generations. This land was my life. The screen door creaked, and for a foolish moment, I thought John had come home. But it was Eleanor Harris, my neighbor and closest friend, walking up the path with her flowered mug in hand, the one I'd given her for Christmas last year. Thought you might want some company, she said, settling into the chair beside mine. Eleanor had been widowed 5 years before me. We'd formed a bond of shared understanding that needed few words. They left for the coast this morning, I said, looking out at the horizon. Without you, again. It wasn't a question. I nodded, my eyes stinging. The bank just called. Christopher tried to transfer $50,000 from my account. Eleanor's breath caught. Barbara, that's the cattle money. Your safety net. Apparently, they needed it for their vacation. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Eleanor studied my face, her gray eyes sharp despite her 70 years. Something else is bothering you. What is it? He also tried to change the ownership of the accounts. I just don't understand why. Eleanor's hand covered mine, warm and steady. Have you noticed anything else strange lately? Papers to sign, conversations that stop when you enter the room. I thought about it. There had been a green folder Lauren had brought over 6 months ago, insurance documents. She'd said, I'd signed without reading, trusting them, and the whispered phone calls Christopher made from the porch, the way Patricia had suddenly become interested in the farm's finances. Several things. Now that you mention it, I told her about the folder, the whispers, the sudden questions about my will and financial arrangements. Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line. Barbara, I think we need to take a closer look at what you've been signing. The uneasiness that had been growing in my chest blossomed into real fear. You don't think they would... I couldn't finish the sentence. I hope not, Eleanor said, squeezing my hand. But it's better to be sure. That night, I barely slept. The ceiling fan clicked with each rotation, marking time as I lay in bed thinking about my son's face when he left that morning. Had there been guilt behind that smile, or just impatience to be away from his aging mother? John's photograph watched from the nightstand. What would you do? I whispered to it. John had always been the strong one, the decisive one, but he was gone, and I was here alone. No, not alone. I had myself, and tomorrow I would find out exactly what was happening. My phone vibrated at 7:30 the next morning. It was Christopher. Mom, what happened with the cards? We can't withdraw a single cent. Can't pay for anything. His voice sounded desperate, almost hysterical. I could hear Lauren screaming in the background and Patricia cursing in that elegant tone she uses when she thinks no one is listening. Mom, are you there? Answer me. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of damp earth and the jasmine flowers I had planted 20 years ago when I still believed this family valued me. I'm here, Christopher. Then be reasonable. We're stranded in this hotel. We can't even pay the bill. What did you do? What I did as if protecting my own money was a crime, as if I didn't have the right to decide about what is rightfully mine. I did what I had to do, son. But Mom, it's an emergency. We need the money. An emergency. Their beach vacation was an emergency, but my blood pressure medicine was not. The roof leaking over my bed was not. The expenses of the farm that supports this entire family were not. The only emergency here, Christopher, is that I finally opened my eyes. I ended the call, my heart hammering in my chest. I had never spoken to my son that way before. John had always taught me to be the peacemaker, to smooth things over. But John wasn't here anymore, and I was tired of smoothing things over. Eleanor arrived at 9 with a box of pastries and a determined look. Ready to do some detective work. We spread all my financial documents across the dining room table, bank statements, property deeds, insurance policies, everything I could find. Eleanor had better eyesight than me, and she knew how to read the fine print. Barbara, she said after an hour, her voice trembling. These papers you signed last month, they give Christopher power of attorney. He can make financial decisions on your behalf. I felt the blood drain from my face. What does that mean exactly? It means he can access your accounts, sell property, make investments, basically anything you could do financially. My world tilted. I had signed my own financial death warrant without knowing it. And this other document, Eleanor continued, pointing to a page with a sticky note. It's a change to your will that leaves everything to Christopher and Lauren, with a small stipend for you to live on. A stipend in my own home. Eleanor's face was grim. It also mentions evaluating your living situation periodically to determine if alternative arrangements might be more suitable. Alternative arrangements. A polite way of saying a nursing home. I thought these were insurance papers, I whispered, staring at my signature at the bottom of the page. Lauren said they were just routine updates. They counted on you trusting them, Eleanor said quietly. And why wouldn't you? They're your family. The word family suddenly felt hollow, stripped of all meaning. My eyes burned with tears that I refused to let fall. This wasn't the time for crying. This was the time for action. What can I do? I asked, straightening my shoulders. First, we go to the bank, Eleanor said, already gathering her purse. Then to a lawyer, not the family lawyer, a new one. And we fix this. Sarah Henderson was waiting for us at the bank. her young face concerned when she saw mine. She ushered us into a private office away from the curious eyes of other customers. "Mrs. Williams, I'm so glad you came in. I've been worried. Please, call me Barbara," I said, settling into a chair. "I need to understand exactly what's been happening with my accounts." Sarah pulled up my information on her computer. "Over the past 2 months, there have been several concerning activities. Your son has made multiple attempts to change account authorizations. He's applied for loans using the farm as collateral. He's requested copies of all your financial statements." Each word was like a small betrayal, piling one on top of another. "Luckily," Sarah continued, "you had given us specific instructions years ago not to authorize any major changes without your physical presence. I remembered that day shortly after John died. He had always handled our finances, but in his final weeks, he had insisted I learn everything. People will try to take advantage of a widow, Barbara," he'd warned. "Don't let them." Even then, had he somehow known, Christopher seemed very upset when we told him we needed to speak with you first. Sarah added, "He even brought a lawyer last week, insisting he had a legal right." "What can I do to protect myself completely?" I asked. "Cancel all powers of attorney you've granted. Change all your passwords. Establish new restrictions." Sarah leaned forward, her voice lowering. "And if you want my advice, Mrs. Williams, do it today." 2 hours later, Eleanor and I sat in the office of Harold Davies, a lawyer Eleanor knew through her church. His office smelled of old books and polished wood, and his silver hair and kind eyes reminded me of John. "Mrs. Williams, what you're telling me is very serious," he said after I explained the situation. "But it has a solution. These documents you signed can be revoked. You were under emotional distress. You didn't have independent legal advice. Can they force me to sign something else?" I asked, thinking of Christopher's temper, of Lauren's manipulative tears. "These documents we're preparing today protect you, Mrs. Williams. No one can force you to do anything with your property. And if anyone tries, that's called coercion. And it's a crime." He adjusted his glasses. "Besides, I've notified the bank and the notary's office. Any document they try to submit with your signature will be verified directly with you." As we signed the new papers, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt in control of my own life. "One more thing," I said before we left. "I want to change my will." Mr. D. Davies raised an eyebrow. "What did you have in mind?" "I want to establish a foundation to help abused women. I want most of my estate to go there when I die." Eleanor looked at me in surprise, but Mr. Davies simply nodded. "A worthy cause. We can certainly arrange that." Outside, the summer air was thick with humidity, but I felt as if I could finally breathe again. "A foundation?" Eleanor asked as we walked to her car. I thought about the documents I'd just seen, about the casual cruelty of planning to discard me after all I'd given. "Yes, because I understand now what it feels like to be controlled, to have your voice taken away." Eleanor nodded slowly. "John would be proud of you." That night, when Christopher called again, I was ready. The storm was just beginning, but for the first time in a long time, I had the umbrella. 3 days after the bank call, Eleanor came to visit me as she does every afternoon. She always brings her favorite mug, the white ceramic one with flowers that I gave her last year. She sat in the rocking chair on the porch, the same one where my late husband used to read the newspaper. "Barbara," she said in that soft voice she uses when she has something important to say, "I need to tell you something I heard in town. I was peeling oranges to make juice, but something in her tone made my hands stop. The peels fell to the floor like small withered suns." "What is it, Eleanor?" She looked towards the road as if afraid someone might hear us. "Yesterday I was at old Mr. Henderson's law office. I had gone to renew the papers for my land. You remember?" I nodded, my heart already beating faster. "And while I was waiting, I overheard Lauren talking on the phone." Eleanor leaned closer. "She was talking to someone about selling the farm. Barbara." The oranges rolled across the porch floor. My hands trembled like leaves in a storm. "Are you sure about what you heard?" As sure as my name is Eleanor Harris, and there's more. She took a deep breath. She also mentioned something about changing the bank accounts to Christopher's name. She said it was more convenient for a woman your age. A wave of nausea rolled through me. Did she say anything else? Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. And then, Barbara, I heard something that chilled my blood. She said that after the sale, they were going to take you to a nursing home in the city, that they had already set aside the money to pay for it. A nursing home, as if I were a piece of old furniture that was no longer useful. As if these 73 years of life were worth nothing. When were they planning this? My voice sounded distant, as if it belonged to someone else. Soon, Lauren said something about closing the deal before the end of summer. The end of summer just 6 weeks away. 6 weeks to save the home and land that had been my life. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling that leaks when it rains, thinking about every strange conversation from the past few months, the times Lauren and Patricia would fall silent when I entered the living room, the whispered phone calls, the papers they would quickly put away when I came near. I remembered when Lauren came over 6 months ago with that green folder, insisting I signed some insurance documents I had signed without reading, trusting them like a fool. What was really in those papers? Everything made sense now. Christopher's insistence that I go to the bank to update my information, the constant pressure for me to give them power over my accounts in case something happened to me, Patricia's frequent visits, who before barely spoke to me, but now came with store-bought cakes and fake smiles. I got up before dawn and walked all over the farm. I touched every tree I had planted, the avocado trees I planted when Christopher was 10, the mango trees that grew up with him, the garden where I taught my granddaughter to recognize plants before Lauren decided it was too dangerous to bring her here. This land has my footprints on every meter. My sweat watered every furrow. My tears fed every seed, and they wanted to take it from me like taking a toy from a child. The next day, very early, I walked to Eleanor's house. Her chickens were clucking in the yard, and the smell of burning wood came from her chimney. I needed to think. I needed a place where I felt safe. Her small kitchen always smells of cinnamon and freshly brewed coffee. She poured me a cup in that flowered mug and sat across from me. Her eyes, the color of old honey, looked at me with an understanding that only years of true friendship can give. What do you need, Barbara? I need you to help me review all the papers I've signed lately. I need to know exactly what they've been planning. We returned to my house and spread everything across the dining table. Eleanor carefully examined each document, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. Barbara, she said after an hour, her voice grave. This isn't just a power of attorney. These papers you signed last month, they give Christopher the power to sell properties in your name. My world swayed. I had signed my own death sentence without knowing it. And this other one, she continued, holding up another document. This gives him full access to all your bank accounts. With these papers, they can do whatever they want with you. Barbara, I cried for the first time in years. I cried like a child. I cried for my naivety, for my blind trust, for having raised a son capable of betraying me like this. But the tears dried quickly. In their place came something I hadn't felt in a long time. Rage. A clean, clear rage that filled me with an energy I thought I had lost. Let's go back to the lawyer in the bank, I said, grabbing my purse. I need to stop this now. Mr. D. Davies listened carefully as I explained what Eleanor had overheard. His face grew increasingly concerned. Mrs. Williams, what they're attempting borders on elder abuse. It's not just unethical, it could be criminal. What can I do to stop it? I asked. First, we'll file an immediate revocation of all powers of attorney. Then we'll create a trust that protects your assets from being sold without multiple approvals, not just yours, but also an independent trustee. And who would that be? Mr. Davies smiled. If you're comfortable with it, I would suggest Ms. Harris here. She clearly has your best interests at heart. Eleanor looked surprised, but nodded firmly. I would be honored. What about the nursing home? I asked, the words sticking in my throat. No one can force you into a nursing home against your will. Mrs. Williams, with these new legal protections in place, they can't touch your property or make medical decisions for you. As we signed the new documents, I felt like I was reclaiming pieces of myself that had been stolen away bit by bit. There's one more thing, I said before we left. I want to change my will completely. Mr. Davies raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind? I want to establish a foundation to help women who have been financially or emotionally abused. I want the majority of my estate to go there. And Christopher, he asked carefully. I thought about my son, the little boy who used to bring me wildflowers, the teenager who helped with harvest, the man who now plotted behind my back. A small inheritance, enough to show I didn't forget him, but not enough to make this betrayal worthwhile. We went to the bank together after leaving Mr. Davies' office. Sarah Henderson met us in the same private room, her face lighting up when she saw the legal documents in my hand. Mrs. Williams, I'm so glad you're taking action. Please, call me Barbara, I said, settling into the chair. I understand my son has been trying to make changes to my accounts. Sarah's professional demeanor slipped for a moment, revealing genuine concern. Yes, and I've been worried. He's been quite insistent. Insistent how? Eleanor asked, her voice sharp. He's come in several times with his wife. They've asked for detailed account information, transaction histories, everything. When we explained we needed your authorization, Mrs. Williams, they became difficult. I could imagine Christopher's face turning red with frustration. Lauren's cold stare. Have they attempted any transactions I don't know about? Sarah typed on her computer. There have been several attempted withdrawals from your savings account. Each was for just under $10,000. Just under the reporting threshold, Eleanor murmured. Sarah nodded. And 3 days ago, there was an attempt to transfer the full balance of your main account, $50,000, to an account in Christopher's name only. The number hit me like a physical blow. $50,000 money from the cattle sale. Money I'd been saving for roof repairs, for medical expenses, for the farm's future. What can I do to protect myself completely? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. We'll start by changing all your account access information, Sarah said. New passwords, new PINs, new security questions. We'll also place a security flag on all your accounts, requiring in-person verification for any transaction over $500. And what about the cards they're using now? Eleanor asked. Sarah's smile was grim. We can cancel those immediately. They'll be unable to use them for any purchases or withdrawals. The thought of Christopher, Lauren, and Patricia stranded at their expensive beach resort with no access to my money gave me a small, fierce satisfaction. Do it, I said. Cancel everything. Sarah hesitated for just a moment. They'll be very angry. Mrs. Williams. I thought about the nursing home they'd planned for me, about the farm they wanted to sell from under me. Let them be angry. It's my money, my choice. As Sarah processed the changes, I stared out the window at the town I'd known all my life. The hardware store where John used to buy his tools, the diner where we celebrated Christopher's high school graduation, the church where we'd said our vows, and later, where I'd said goodbye to my husband. This town was part of me, just as the farm was. They couldn't take it away. It's done, Sarah said, handing me a folder of information. All cards are canceled. All accounts are secured. They can't access anything without your physical presence. Thank you, I said, taking the folder with hands that didn't tremble anymore. Outside, the summer heat hit us like a wall. Eleanor fanned herself with her hand. What now, Barbara? Now we wait for them to come home, I said, looking at the clear blue sky. And we prepare. That night, as I watered the tomatoes and lettuce they would eat upon their return, my phone vibrated. It was Christopher. I took a deep breath before answering. Hello. Mom, what the hell is going on? His voice was tight with fury. We're completely stranded here. The cards are dead. We can't pay the hotel bill. We can't even buy gas to get home. I could hear Lauren crying dramatically in the background. Patricia's voice rose above the chaos. This is outrageous. How dare she do this to us? Christopher, I said calmly, I know what you've been planning. The line went silent for a moment. Then what are you talking about? The power of attorney, the changes to my will, the plans to sell the farm and put me in a nursing home. More silence. Then Lauren's voice, distant but clear. She knows. Christopher's tone changed, becoming placating. Mom, you're confused. We're just trying to help you. At your age, managing such a large property is too much responsibility. My age, the words hung between us. I'm old enough to know when I'm being betrayed. Christopher, by my own son. Mom, please, I've canceled the cards. I've revoked your power of attorney. I've changed my will. The farm will never be yours to sell. His breathing became heavy. You can't do this to us. We're your family. Family. The word that they had used to manipulate me for months. Family when they needed money. Family when they wanted me to sign papers. But not family when they were planning to sell my house and lock me in a nursing home. If you want to discuss this further, come home. All of you. Right now. We can't come home. We don't have money for gas. Then walk or borrow, or do whatever you have to do. But come home. Christopher, it's time we had an honest conversation. I hung up before he could answer. My hands didn't tremble this time. I felt strangely calm, like when the shock wears off after an accident and you realize you're still alive. That evening, Eleanor came over with a bottle of bourbon and 2 glasses. Thought you might need this, she said, settling onto the porch beside me. We sat watching the sunset paint the fields gold, sipping bourbon that burned my throat in the best way. Are you ready for them to come back? She asked. I considered the question. I'm not the same woman they left behind. Eleanor, for the first time in years. I feel strong. You were always strong. Barbara, you just forgot for a while. We sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell. Fireflies began to blink in the garden, reminding me of summer evenings when Christopher was small, chasing those living stars with his hands cupped, ready to capture magic. Do you think I did the right thing? I finally asked. Eleanor's gaze was steady in the gathering dark. The only thing you did wrong was taking so long to do it. She then told me that for months she had seen how I was fading away, how I stopped smiling when I talked about Christopher, how my shoulders had started to stoop under the weight of always being available for everyone. Your late husband, God rest his soul, once told me, Eleanor, if anything happens to me, make sure no one takes advantage of Barbara. She's too good for her own good. Those words touched my soul. John had seen something I had refused to see for years. I worked in the garden the next morning like never before. I planted new seeds of cilantro and parsley. I watered the tomatoes that were beginning to ripen. I pulled the weeds that were growing between the lettuce. Every movement was an affirmation. This land is mine. These plants are mine. This life is mine. Eleanor arrived around noon as always, but this time she didn't bring her flowered mug. She brought a bag full of freshly made pastries and another bottle of bourbon. To celebrate, she said with a smile that crinkled her whole face. Celebrate what? That you finally got your nerve back. Barbara. We sat on the porch eating pastries and taking small sips of the bourbon that burned my throat in the best way. The midday sun fell on us like a blessing. The phone rang at 3:00 in the afternoon. This time it was Lauren. Mother-in-law, we need to talk. Her voice had lost all its usual fake sweetness. Now it sounded sharp, desperate. Speak. What's going on? Why did you do that with the accounts? What do you think, Lauren? I don't know. That's why I'm asking. We're stranded here. I got up from the porch and walked into the kitchen. I needed to be moving for this conversation. You know what? Lauren, I think you do know. I think you know exactly why I did what I did. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? You don't know anything about a conversation at Mr. Henderson's law office. You don't know anything about papers to sell the farm. You don't know anything about plans to take me to a nursing home. Total silence. I couldn't even hear the waves in the background anymore. Mother-in-law. Don't call me mother-in-law. Mothers-in-law are family. And you stopped being my family the day you decided to rob me. It wasn't robbery. It was for your own good. Lauren's voice rose defensively. A woman your age can't manage such a large property on her own. There it was. The truth, finally. A woman my age. as if 73 were a disease, as if experience were a disability. And who decided that you, your mother, my own son? We were all worried about you. Lies. You were worried about the money, about the property, about what you could get if I disappeared from the picture. I heard her pass the phone to someone else. It was Patricia. Barbara, let's be reasonable. Her tone was condescending, as if she were explaining something to a foolish child. You can't stay alone on that farm forever. You need help. You need care. You know what I need. Patricia, I need you and your daughter to stay away from my family. I need you to stop manipulating my son. And I need you to understand that this farm will be mine until the day I die. You're making a terrible mistake. Without us, you can't handle the business. You don't understand banks or taxes or anything. There it was again, the same old song. The poor old woman who doesn't understand anything, the same woman who had managed this farm for 40 years, who had raised cattle, who had negotiated with buyers, who had paid taxes and managed employees long before Lauren even knew how to write her name. You know what? Patricia, you're right about one thing. I did make a terrible mistake. But it wasn't today. It was 6 months ago when I trusted you. I hung up for the second time that day. This time I trembled a little, not from fear, but from a strange energy that was coursing through my body, as if I had been asleep for years and was finally waking up completely. Eleanor was still on the porch, rocking gently and looking at the fields. Everything okay? She asked without turning to look at me. Everything's perfect. They arrived at dusk on the third day, like a storm you see coming from afar. Christopher's car kicked up a cloud of dust on the road that took several minutes to settle. I was watering the plants in the garden, but I left the hose running and sat in the rocking chair on the porch to wait for them. They got out of the car like actors in a poorly rehearsed play. Christopher first, with that scolded child face he used to make when his father caught him in some mischief. Lauren next, in her wrinkled green dress, her hair disheveled from the trip. And finally Patricia, adjusting her sunglasses even though the sun was already setting. None of them looked at me directly at first. They just stood there as if waiting for me to speak first, as if I owed them an explanation. The silence stretched so long that even the crickets fell quiet. Well, I finally said without getting up from the rocking chair. Christopher was the first to walk towards the porch. His steps sounded heavy on the wooden planks his father had laid 15 years ago. Mom, we need to talk. Talk! I kept my voice even, though my heart was racing. About what exactly? He sat on the step, the position he used as a child when he wanted me to forgive him for something. But he was 42 years old now, and childhood tricks no longer worked on me. I don't understand what happened. Why did you do what you did? You really don't understand. Christopher. Lauren approached then with those high heels that had no place on a farm and made her walk like a duck. Mother-in-law, I think there was a misunderstanding. We never meant to hurt you. I looked at her directly for the first time. Her eyes were swollen. She had probably cried during the trip. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration for having lost. A misunderstanding. Is that what you call planning to sell my house behind my back? We just wanted what was best for you. Patricia had stayed by the car, as if ready to flee at any moment, but her voice carried clearly to the porch. Barbara, a woman your age shouldn't be alone in such an isolated place. It's dangerous. I got up from the rocking chair for the first time since they arrived. My legs felt solid, firm, as if they had regained a strength I had forgotten I had. Dangerous? You know what's dangerous. Patricia trusting family who plan to rob you. Signing papers without reading because you think your own son would never harm you. Christopher stood up, too. In his eyes, I saw something I had never seen before, fear. Fear that his plan had completely failed. Mom, the papers you signed were just to protect you, so that if something happened to you, we could help you. Protect me by calling me crazy, by telling people in town I'm losing my memory. The color drained from his face. He didn't know that I had heard that conversation last week when they thought I was napping. Yes, you did. You told Mr. Henderson that I was starting to show signs of dementia, that sometimes I didn't remember things, that it was necessary for you to have legal control over my decisions. Lauren took a step back. Her heels sank into the soft garden soil. Christopher, maybe we should go. She's upset. I'm not leaving. She's my mom, and I'm going to fix this. Fix what exactly? I asked. My voice came out louder than I expected, filling the space between us. Fix this misunderstanding. Make you understand that everything we did was with you in mind. I stepped off the porch and walked until I was standing in front of him. Christopher is tall. He always was. But at that moment, I felt taller than him. You want me to understand, fine. Then explain to me why you had a buyer for the farm. Explain why you had already set aside money for a nursing home. Explain why Lauren was looking up prices for apartments in the city. Every word I said was like a blow. I saw them shrink. Search for excuses they no longer had. Mom, no more lies. I've heard enough lies. Patricia finally approached, walking with that fake elegance she uses when she wants to impress. Barbara, be reasonable. You can't live alone forever. You need someone to take care of your affairs. Someone like you, people who plan to rob me and then throw me out like an old dog. No one was going to throw you out. The home we chose is very good. It has gardens and activities. There was the full confession. She wasn't even trying to deny it anymore. A home with gardens and activities. And when did you ask me if I wanted gardens and activities? Christopher ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. Because we knew you would say no. You're too stubborn to accept help. Help is selling my house. Help is stealing my savings. Help. We weren't going to steal anything. The money was going to be used to take care of you. Lies. The money was going to be used for you to live comfortably while I rotted in a nursing home. Lauren started crying again. Those manipulative tears she used whenever things didn't go her way. Mother-in-law, please. We're family. Family. I walked to the garden and cut a white rose from the bush I planted when my granddaughter was born. I held it in my hands, feeling the soft thorns against my fingers. Do you know what real family is? Family is Eleanor, who warned me about your plans. Family is Mr. Davies, who helped me protect my rights without asking for anything in return. Family is this land that has sustained me for 40 years. But we're your blood. Mom! Christopher shouted, desperate. Blood means nothing if the heart is rotten. Patricia stepped forward then with that fake smile she reserved for special occasions. Barbara, let's be practical. You need us more than you think. Who's going to take care of you when you get sick? Who's going to manage the farm business? I will take care of myself as I have for 73 years. And as for the farm business, I have some news for you. I went back to the porch and took from my purse the papers I had signed that morning with Mr. Davies. Yesterday, I signed a new will. Everything I have will go to a foundation that helps abused women. Not a single cent, not an inch of land will be for you. The silence that followed was different from all the others. It was a silence of defeat, of destroyed plans, of dreams of easy money evaporating like dew in the morning. Christopher sat on the step again, but this time not like a child seeking forgiveness. He sat like a man who finally understood the consequences of his actions. Mom, you can't do that. I'm your only son. Being my only son gave you rights, Christopher, but it also gave you obligations, and you chose to betray me instead of taking care of me. Lauren had stopped crying. Now she was looking at me with a pure rage that finally showed her true face. You're crazy. Completely crazy. Christopher, do something. What do you want me to do? I don't know, but you can't let her take everything from us. No one is taking anything from you, I said calmly. You are simply losing something that was never yours. The sun had set completely. The first stars were beginning to appear in the violet sky. It was time for them to leave. Go, I told them. This house is no longer your home. Christopher looked at me as if he hadn't understood the words, as if it were impossible that his mother, the woman who had cleaned his scraped knees and prepared his favorite meals for 40 years, was telling him to leave. Mom, you can't be serious. I have never been more serious in my life. Lauren approached then with the desperation of a cornered animal. Mother-in-law, think carefully. Without us, you have no one. What are you going to do when you get sick, when you need help? I'm going to do the same thing I've always done. Solve my problems on my own. But you're 73 years old. And you're 35, but you act like you're 5. Age is no excuse for being useless. Patricia had already gotten into the car, probably calculating that this battle was lost, but she shouted from the window, "Barbara, this isn't over. We have legal rights. The papers you signed give us power." Those papers, I took the folder I had taken to the lawyer out of my purse. Are you referring to these papers that have already been nullified? Or these other ones where it's proven that you pressured me to sign without legal representation? Her face fell. Even from a distance, I could see how reality hit her like a hammer. That's impossible. Those documents are valid. They were valid until Mr. Davies proved there was emotional coercion. It turns out the law protects senior citizens from abusive children. Who would have thought? Christopher stood up abruptly, so fast that the step planks creaked. We are not abusive. Everything we did was for your own good. For my own good. Christopher, look around. Look at this farm I built with my own hands. Look at this house where I raised you. Do you really think I don't know what's good for me? I walked to the garden where my roses were, the same ones I had planted when he was little, and he asked me why flowers had thorns. To protect themselves from those who want to hurt them. I had explained then. I never thought that one day he would be one of those threats. Look, Christopher, do you see these roses I planted them 20 years ago? I've cared for them, pruned them, protected them from pests. No one else knows how to care for them like I do. No one else knows how much water they need, when to fertilize them, how to protect them from the cold. I turned to him, holding the white rose I had cut. This farm is the same. I know how every foot of this land works. I know every tree, every animal, every problem that can arise. I've managed droughts, floods, pests, low prices, high prices. I've done it alone for years, especially after your father died. But Mom, no, let me finish. In all these years, did you ever see me fail? Did a harvest ever get lost because of me? Were we ever unable to pay the bills? Did this family ever go hungry? He couldn't answer because the answer was no. I had never failed. I had never let anything bad happen to this family. So why did you decide I could no longer take care of myself? Why? Because Lauren told me that at your age... Lauren told you. I shook my head slowly. And since when does Lauren know more about my life than I do? Lauren stepped forward with her fists clenched. I was just trying to help. Your son was worried about you. Lies. My son was worried about the money, and you were worried about getting a house without having to work to pay for it. That's not true. Isn't it? Then explain to me why the day after I signed the papers, you had already set aside $50,000 to buy an apartment in the city. Christopher's face went white. He didn't know I had seen the messages on his phone when he left it on the table during lunch. How do you know that? Because I'm not blind. Christopher, nor deaf, nor stupid. I saw the messages with the real estate agent. I saw the floor plans for the apartment you wanted to buy with my money. Patricia got out of the car again, but this time she looked like a wounded beast. All of this is normal. Children always inherit from their parents. We were just speeding up the process. Speeding up? Do you mean you were waiting for me to die? No, I mean it was logical to plan for the future. The future, my future, without asking me what I wanted for my future. I walked to the fence that divides my property from Eleanor's, in the distance. I could see the light from her kitchen. She was probably making dinner, unaware that the war that would define the rest of my life was unfolding here. Do you know what my future was in your plans? 3 meals a day in a communal dining room, a single bed in a room I would share with a stranger, scheduled activities as if I were a 5-year-old child, visits once a month if you had time. The home we chose was very good, Lauren protested. Did you visit it? Well, we saw the pictures online. The pictures online. You were going to lock up your husband's mother in a place you didn't even know in person. Christopher approached then with that lost child face that broke my heart despite everything. Mom, forgive me. I know we messed up, but we can fix this. We can start over. For a moment, just a moment, I was tempted to forgive, to hug him like when he was little and had nightmares, to tell him everything was going to be okay. But then I remembered the conversation I had overheard 3 nights ago when they thought I was asleep. Christopher telling Lauren, "It won't be long now. When she's in the home, we can do whatever we want with the farm." Start over as if nothing happened. Yes, exactly. We can forget all this. Christopher, look me in the eyes. He did. In those eyes, I saw the boy he had been, but also the man he had become, a man capable of betraying his own mother for money. I can't forget. And even if I could, I don't want to. Why? Because what you did taught me something important, that family is not just blood. Family is respect. It is affection. It is protection. You took all 3 things from me. Lauren started walking towards the car, dragging her feet on the ground. Christopher, let's go. She's not going to change her mind. I'm not leaving. She's my mom. Your mom has already made her decision, and we can't stay here like beggars. Christopher looked at me one last time. In his eyes was something I had never seen before. The understanding that he had lost something forever. Not just the inheritance, not just the money. He had lost his mother. Is there really no way to fix this? There was a way, Christopher. It was called not betraying me. Mom, go, please, before I say something I might regret. He stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Finally, he walked to the car with slow steps, as if each step pained him. Before getting in, he turned one last time. I love you, Mom. I loved you too, Christopher. Past tense. The car started, kicking up dust again. I watched the taillights recede down the road until they became red dots in the darkness. When they disappeared completely, I sat on the porch step. For the first time in days, everything was silent, and for the first time in years, that silence felt like peace. I sat on the porch step until the stars completely filled the sky. The night air smelled of jasmine and damp earth, a scent that had always calmed me. But that night it had a different flavor. It tasted of freedom. Eleanor appeared on the path connecting our properties, walking slowly with a steaming mug in her hands. Mind if I sit with you? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Not at all. In fact, I need the company. She settled on the step next to me and handed me the mug. Hot chocolate with cinnamon. Exactly what my soul needed at that moment. I saw them leave, she said after a while. Everything okay? Everything's perfect. We sat in silence, sharing the chocolate. Eleanor has that wisdom of knowing when to talk and when to simply be present. You know what's the strangest thing? I finally said. I thought I would feel sad. I thought I would cry. That I would regret it. And you don't feel that way. No. I feel free. As if a weight I didn't know I was carrying has been lifted from my shoulders. Eleanor nodded slowly. My grandmother used to say that sometimes you have to prune the sick branches so the tree can grow healthy again. That night I slept better than I had in months. I didn't wake up at 3 huzzers in the morning worrying if I had properly secured the bank accounts. I didn't get up thinking about what excuse Lauren would invent to ask for money. For the first time in a while, my mind was at peace. The next morning, as I was making coffee, the phone rang. For a moment, I thought it would be Christopher apologizing or trying to manipulate me again, but it was Mr. Davies. Mrs. Williams, good morning. How are you feeling? Like new, Mr. Davies. And you? Very well. I'm calling because I wanted to confirm some details of the will we signed yesterday. Are you sure about your decisions? More sure than ever. Perfect. I also wanted to inform you that your son came to my office very early this morning. He wanted to know if there was any way to contest the changes you made. I wasn't surprised. Christopher had always been persistent when he wanted something. And what did you tell him? I explained that the documents are perfectly legal and that you are in full possession of your mental faculties. I also suggested that if he wanted to reconcile with you, he should come and talk to you directly, not through lawyers. And what did he say? He left without a word. After hanging up, I decided it was time to start my new life in earnest. I couldn't stay lamenting the past. I had to build something new, something meaningful. I walked all over the farm, seeing it with different eyes. It was no longer just the property I had inherited from my husband. It was no longer just the place where I had raised my son. Now it was my future, my project, my legacy. The house needed repairs. The kitchen roof had leaks we had ignored for months because we didn't have the money to fix it, according to Lauren. But now that I didn't have to support 3 non-working adults, I did have money. I called Mr. Peterson, the town's contractor, an honest man who had worked for us for years. "Mrs. Williams, what a pleasure to hear from you. How can I help you?" "Mr. Peterson, I need you to come and look at the house. I want to make all the repairs we've been putting off. All of them. Are you sure that's going to be a big project? I have time, and I have money." "When can you come?" "I'll stop by tomorrow morning if that works for you." Next, I called the veterinarian. For months, I had wanted to buy more chickens and maybe some goats, but Patricia complained about the noise and the smell. "Dr. Bell, this is Barbara. Could you advise me on expanding my coop?" "Of course. What do you have in mind?" "I want to start a small farm. Chickens, goats, maybe some pigs. Something that will give me a steady income, but also keep me busy." "That sounds like an excellent idea. Is your family on board?" "My family is me, doctor, and I am completely on board." That afternoon, Eleanor and I sat at the dining room table making plans. She brought paper and pencil, and I laid all my ideas on the table. "What if we start a small, home-cooked meal business?" Eleanor suggested. "Your cooking is delicious, and I know how to make preserves and jams." "Do you think it would work? There's no one in town who sells homemade food. All the women work outside the home now. I'm sure there's a market." We started crunching the numbers. With the savings I no longer had to share with Christopher and his family, I could invest in basic equipment for a small commercial kitchen. "And we could sell at the Saturday market," Eleanor added, "or even do home delivery." For the first time in years, I was excited about something. I had a project, a purpose, a reason to get up every morning that wasn't just survival. That night, as I ate dinner alone in the kitchen, I realized something. The house felt bigger, not emptier. Bigger, as if I had reclaimed spaces I didn't know I had lost. The phone rang at 9:00 at night. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello, Mrs. Williams." The voice was of a young, shy woman. "Yes, this is Barbara. Who is this? Please." It's Ashley, the wife of Jeremy Thompson, Mrs. Harris's son. She gave me your number. Jeremy, the young man who had studied business administration and now worked in the city. What can I do for you, honey?" "Mrs. Harris told me you're thinking of starting a food business. I work in marketing, and I was wondering if you would need any help." "What kind of help?" "Well, I could help you with social media, with label design, with promotion. I would love to be part of a project like that." "And how much would you charge for that help?" "Nothing at first. If the business works out, we could talk about a small partnership. But first, I want to help you get off the ground." I hung up the phone with a huge smile. I didn't just have a project, I had a team. The next day, Mr. Peterson arrived early with his tape measure and notebook. We went over the whole house from the roof to the foundations. "Mrs. Williams, this house is solid. It just needs some love and maintenance. How long would it take to make it like new?" "About 3 months working every day, but it's going to look like a palace." "Do it," while Mr. Peterson was taking measurements. I walked to the back of the property where I had always wanted to build a small workshop. My late husband had dreamed of having his carpentry shop there, but we never found the time or the money. Now I had both. I took out my phone and dialed the number of the construction company. "Good morning. I need a quote for a new construction." "What type of construction?" "A carpentry workshop. And next to it, a small commercial kitchen." "When do you need it by?" "I'm in no hurry, but I want it to be perfect." For the first time in 73 years, I was building something just for me without having to ask for permission, without having to justify expenses, without having to listen to complaints about the noise or the mess. It was my money, my land, my decision, and it felt glorious. Mr. Peterson's crew began work the next week. The sound of hammers and saws filled the farm from morning till evening. I loved every minute of it. It was the sound of progress, of rebirth. Dr. Bell arrived with 10 chickens and 2 goats, with a promise to bring more when I was ready. Eleanor and I spent days clearing space for a larger garden, planning what vegetables would sell best at the market. Ashley came every evening after her regular job to work on our business plan. She was young, maybe 30, with bright eyes and a quick mind. She had ideas I would never have thought of. "Mrs. Williams, we need to create a brand," she said one evening, spreading design sketches on the kitchen table. "Something that tells your story, that makes people connect with you." My story, who would care about an old woman's story? Ashley's eyes were serious. "Everyone, Mrs. Williams, your story is about resilience, about starting over, about not letting age define what you can do. That's powerful." She showed me logos with names like Barbara's Kitchen and Williams Farm Fresh. Simple designs with warm colors that somehow captured the essence of what we were trying to build. "And we'll need a website," she continued. "Nothing fancy, but somewhere people can see your products, learn your story, place orders." Eleanor laughed at my bewildered expression. "Barbara, welcome to the 21st century." But despite my initial hesitation, I found myself embracing these new ideas. I had spent too many years standing still, letting life happen to me. Now I was making things happen. The first month flew by in a blur of activity. The roof was repaired, the walls painted, the plumbing updated. The workshop began to take shape at the back of the property, and next to it, a small but professional kitchen with stainless steel counters and industrial appliances. Every evening, Eleanor and I experimented with recipes. Her fig jam was a revelation, and my apple pies always disappeared quickly when we shared them with the construction workers. "We need to be ready for the Harvest Festival," Eleanor said as we bottled our latest batch of blackberry preserves. "It's the biggest market of the year, and it's only 2 months away." The Harvest Festival. I had attended it every year since I was a child, but always as a visitor, never as a vendor. The thought of having our own booth, of selling our own products, filled me with a nervous excitement. "Do you think we'll be ready?" I asked, screwing a lid onto a jar. "We'll make sure of it," Eleanor said with a determination that made me believe her. 3 weeks into our new venture, I encountered my first real challenge. I needed a business license, which meant going to the town hall where everyone knew me as Christopher's mother or John's widow. I had never been just Barbara Williams. I dressed carefully that morning in my best skirt and blouse, applied a touch of lipstick, and drove my old truck into town. The municipal building hadn't changed in 30 years, same faded brick, same creaking wooden floors. At the counter, I met Martha Jenkins, a woman my age who had gone to school with me but had always treated me with a certain condescension since she married the bank manager. "Barbara Williams," she said, peering at me over her glasses. "What brings you here?" "I need a business license," he said, straightening my shoulders. "I'm starting a food production company." Martha's eyebrows rose so high they nearly disappeared into her hairline. "A business at your age." There it was again. At your age, as if being 73 meant I should be knitting in a rocking chair, waiting for death. "Yes, Martha, at my age." I kept my voice level. "I'll need the forms, please." She handed them over with a skeptical look. "You know there are health inspections for food businesses, right? And taxes to file quarterly. It's quite complicated." "I managed a 200-acre farm for 40 years. Martha, I think I can handle some paperwork." Her lips thinned. "Well, I heard Christopher isn't living at the farm anymore. Is everything okay with your family? Small towns, everyone knows your business, or thinks they do. Everything is exactly as it should be. Now, can you tell me how long it will take to process the license?" Martha sniffed. 2 weeks, usually. But there's quite a backlog." "Martha," I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. "Do you remember when your Timmy crashed his bike into my flower bed and I didn't tell your husband who had really scratched his new car? I think we could help each other out here." Her cheeks flushed. "I'll see what I can do. Maybe by the end of the week." "That would be lovely. Thank you." As I was leaving, I heard whispers behind me. starting a business at her age. Heard her son moved out. Always was a bit strange. I held my head high. Let them talk. They would see soon enough. The license arrived 3 days later, and with it came our first real obstacle. Dr. Bell called to say that one of the goats was sick, potentially with something contagious. We might lose our small herd before we even got started. Can you treat it? I asked, my heart sinking. I'll try, Mrs. Williams. But it's serious, and quarantine means you won't be able to get more animals until we're sure it's contained. This was a blow. The goat cheese was going to be one of our signature products. Without it, we'd have to rethink our entire line. I called Eleanor with the news. Well, that's a setback, she said pragmatically. But not the end of the world. We still have the preserves, the pies, the herb blends. But the cheese was going to be our premium product. Then we'll find another premium product. What about those honey cakes your mother used to make? The ones with the secret recipe, my mother's honey cakes. I hadn't made them in years, not since John died. He had loved them so much. I'm not sure I remember the exact recipe. Then we'll experiment until we get it right. Come on, Barbara. We've faced worse than a sick goat. She was right, of course. That evening, we pored over my mother's old recipe box, testing variations of the honey cake until the kitchen was filled with the sweet scent of my childhood. The next challenge came from an unexpected source. Lauren had apparently been talking to the ladies at her country club, spreading rumors that I was not well and that my business was a sad attempt to stay relevant. Ashley heard about it from her mother, who was a cleaner at the club. They're saying you're having some kind of late-life crisis, she told me hesitantly. That you're unstable. I had to laugh. Unstable because I'm building something instead of waiting to be put in a home. I know it's ridiculous, Ashley said. But some people are listening. They're saying they won't buy food made by, well, an old crazy lady. I finished for her. She nodded, embarrassed. I thought about it for a moment. Then an idea struck me. Ashley, you said we need to tell my story. Right, that it's powerful. Absolutely. Then let's tell it. All of it. Let's use these rumors to our advantage. Her eyes lit up. Mrs. Williams, you're a genius. We spent the next week crafting what Ashley called our brand narrative, not hiding my age or experience, but celebrating it. 73 years of wisdom in every bite became our tagline. Our logo featured an elegant silhouette of a woman with silver hair. Instead of traditional product descriptions, each jar and package would include a small story. This blackberry jam recipe sustained my family through the drought of '95, or I first made these honey cakes when my son lost his first tooth. People don't just buy food, Ashley explained. They buy stories, connections, meaning. And she was right. When we set up our first small table at the weekly farmers market, people were drawn not just to our products, but to the stories behind them. They wanted to talk to me, to hear more about the farm, about how I was starting over at 73. My daughter sent me to get your honey cake, one elderly man told me, pressing the money into my hand. She said it's made by a woman who refused to be put out to pasture. I like that. My kids have been dropping hints about retirement communities, too. We sold out in 2 hours. Every jar, every cake, every packet of herbs gone. People even placed orders for the following week. As we packed up our empty baskets, Eleanor nudged me. Look who's watching. Across the square, partially hidden behind a tree, was Christopher. He looked thinner, his clothes less crisp than usual. When our eyes met, he quickly turned away and disappeared into the crowd. Should we go after him? Eleanor asked. I shook my head. No. He knows where to find me if he wants to talk. That night, as I counted our earnings at the kitchen table, I felt a strange mix of triumph and sadness. We had made more in one day than I used to have for a week's expenses. But seeing Christopher, even from a distance, had stirred feelings I thought I had put to rest. You miss him, Eleanor said, reading my thoughts as she often did. I miss who I thought he was, I corrected. The son who would protect me, not try to rob me. People can change, Barbara. Can they? Or do difficult times just reveal who they truly are? She didn't have an answer for that. Neither did I. The business grew faster than we expected. By the 4th week, we had regular customers who came specifically for Barbara's Kitchen products. We had to hire 2 local women to help with production. Maria was in her 50s, recently divorced and struggling to make ends meet. Rebecca was younger, a single mother of 2 trying to escape an abusive relationship. Both needed flexible hours and a chance to rebuild their lives. "I'm not just hiring help," I told Eleanor as we trained them. "I'm creating the foundation I promised in my will. You're not planning on needing that will anytime soon, are you?" she asked sharply. "No, but why wait until I'm dead to do good?" Working with Maria and Rebecca gave me a new perspective. Their stories were different from mine, but the underlying theme was the same women whose lives had been controlled or diminished by others, who were now fighting to reclaim their power. "My ex-husband always told me I was a terrible cook," Maria confided as we prepared a batch of apple butter. "He said no one would ever pay for my food." "Mine said I was too stupid to ever run a business," Rebecca added, carefully filling jars. "That I needed him to make decisions for me." "And here you both are," I said, "proving them wrong every day." As our little team worked together, I began to see that what we were building was more than a business. It was a sanctuary of sorts, a place where women could rediscover their worth. One afternoon, Ashley burst into the kitchen with excitement radiating from her face. "Mrs. Williamsdale, you won't believe this. The county fair wants us to have a featured booth. They've heard about our story and think it would inspire people." The county fair was a much bigger deal than the local market. Thousands of people from surrounding towns would see our products. "Are we ready for something that big?" I asked, suddenly nervous. "We're more than ready," Eleanor declared. "We just need to scale up production." Scaling up meant more help, more equipment, more ingredients. It meant truly committing to this new path. "I'll need to use more of my savings," I said, calculating costs in my head. "It's an investment, not an expense," Ashley reminded me. "And it's your money to use as you choose." Your money to use as you choose. Such a simple statement, but it hit me like a revelation. For so long, I had thought of the farm's money as belonging to the family, to the future, to Christopher. I had denied myself small comforts because we needed to save or it wasn't a necessity. Now I understood that controlling my finances had been another way Christopher and Lauren had controlled me. They decided what was necessary, what was frivolous, what was worth spending on. "You're right," I told Ashley. "Let's do it. Let's invest in ourselves." We spent the next week preparing for the county fair. Mr. Peterson's crew finished the commercial kitchen just in time. It was small but perfect gleaming counters, professional-grade ovens, ample storage. For the first time, we could produce at scale. The night before the fair, as we were packing up our products, the phone rang. It was Christopher. "Mom." His voice sounded uncertain, almost humble. "Hello, Christopher. I saw you at the market. Your business looks successful." "It is." A pause. "I'm glad." "That's good." I waited, saying nothing, letting the silence stretch between us. "I've been thinking a lot," he finally continued, "about what happened, about what I did. And I was wrong. I see that now." Another pause. "Lauren and I have separated. She moved in with her mother. This surprised me, though perhaps it shouldn't have. Their relationship had always seemed based more on mutual advantage than love." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it despite everything. No one should have to go through a separation alone. "Are you—" His laugh was bitter. "After what she tried to do to you. I'm sorry for your pain, Christopher. Not for the end of a relationship that brought out the worst in both of you." He was quiet for a moment. "I've been working construction. Manual labor. It's different from what I'm used to." I thought of my son who had always worn pressed shirts and shiny shoes, who considered physical work beneath him now wearing a hard hat and work boots. Different how? Harder, more honest, somehow. The men I work with, they don't care about status or appearances, just whether you pull your weight. I nodded, though he couldn't see it. "That's how your father lived his life." "I know. I understand that better now." He paused again. Mom, I'd like to see you. To apologize properly. To try to, I don't know, start to make amends. The county fair was tomorrow. The business was taking off. My life was moving forward in ways I had never imagined. Did I want to revisit the past? I need more time, Christopher. This new life I'm building, it's still fragile. I'm not ready to complicate it yet. His disappointment was audible in his breathing. I understand, but when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here. After we hung up, I sat for a long time staring at the phone. Part of me wanted to call him back, to tell him to come home, to try to recapture what we had lost. But the wiser part knew that some broken things can't be mended quickly or easily, if at all. Eleanor found me still sitting there. Christopher, she guessed. I nodded. What did he want? To apologize, to make amends. And what do you want? I looked around the kitchen at the jars waiting to be labeled, at the lists of orders, at the recipe cards spread across the table. I want to see where this new path leads before I consider turning back. Eleanor squeezed my shoulder. Then that's what we'll do. The county fair exceeded all our expectations. Our booth decorated with photographs of the farm, of Eleanor and me working in the kitchen, of our small team of women drew crowds throughout the day. People were fascinated by our story. Started a business at 73, they exclaimed. After her family tried to take everything, the details had grown more dramatic in the retelling, but the essential truth remained. We sold 3 times what we had anticipated. By the end of the first day, we had to call Maria and Rebecca to bring more stock for the second day. Mrs. Williams, a woman in her 60s, approached our booth as we were closing up. I just wanted to tell you that you've inspired me. I've been letting my children make decisions for me since my husband died. But seeing you here, well, I think it's time I took back the reins. Throughout the day, similar conversations occurred. Women and some men sharing how they felt, diminished by age, by family, by society's expectations. You've touched a nerve, Ashley observed as we drove home. There are so many people who feel like they've lost control of their lives as they've gotten older. I thought about John, about how he had always insisted I learn to handle the farm business. You never know when you'll have to stand on your own 2 feet, he'd say. He had been preparing me all along, in his own way. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was too full of ideas, of possibilities. I got up and went to the kitchen, where I found Eleanor already sitting with a cup of tea. Couldn't sleep either, she asked, pushing a cup toward me. Too much thinking. About the business, about everything, about where we go from here. Eleanor sipped her tea thoughtfully. I've been thinking about that too. The business is growing faster than we expected. We'll need more help soon. And more space, I added. The kitchen is already feeling cramped with 4 of us working there. There's something else, Eleanor said, her voice softer. Remember how you wanted your will to establish a foundation for abused women? I nodded. What if we didn't wait? What if that became part of what we're building now? I set down my cup. What do you mean exactly? Rebecca's situation got me thinking. She's not the only woman trying to escape a bad relationship with no resources, no support. What if we created a place for women like her, not just jobs, but a safe place to stay if needed, training, support? The idea resonated somewhere deep inside me, like a sanctuary. Exactly. Eleanor's eyes were bright. The farm has plenty of land. We could build small cabins, create a real community. It would take money, I said, calculating in my head. More than what the business is generating now. We both have savings, Eleanor pointed out. And there are grants for programs like this. Ashley would know how to apply for them. I thought about the future I had once envisioned, the farm passing to Christopher, the land remaining in the family, my legacy continuing through blood. But that dream had shattered the day I discovered their betrayal. Perhaps this was a different kind of legacy. Not through blood, but through purpose. Let's do it, I said, feeling a certainty I hadn't experienced in years. Let's build something that matters. The next morning, we called Ashley and outlined our vision. Her excitement was immediate and infectious. "This is amazing. A business that also functions as a social enterprise. It's exactly the kind of story that attracts grants, donations, community support." "We don't want charity," I clarified. "The business needs to stand on its own." "It will," Ashley assured me. "But the foundation aspect helping women rebuild their lives that opens doors to additional resources." Over the next week, our vision began to take shape. Ashley researched grants and legal structures. Eleanor and I walked the property, identifying where cabins could be built, where a communal garden could be planted. "We should talk to Rebecca," Eleanor suggested. "Get her input on what would have helped her most when she was trying to leave." Rebecca's insights were invaluable. "The hardest part wasn't leaving," she told us. "It was staying gone. When you have no money, no job skills, no support system, going back seems like the only option, even when you know it's dangerous." Her words confirmed what we already suspected: women needed more than temporary shelter. They needed a pathway to independence. "What if we expanded the business to include training?" I suggested. "Not just in food production, but in business management, finances, marketing. A holistic approach." Ashley nodded. "Teaching skills that lead to true self-sufficiency." The more we discussed it, the more right it felt. This wasn't just about creating products or making money. It was about creating a model of female empowerment and resilience. As our plans developed, I found myself thinking more about Christopher, about his call, his desire to make amends. Part of me still hurt from his betrayal, still bristled at the memory of how easily he had been willing to discard me. But another part, the mother who had loved him for 42 years, wondered if people could truly change. One evening, as I was closing up the kitchen, Mr. Davies called. "Mrs. Williams, I wanted to give you a heads up. Your son came to see me again today." My heart skipped. "What did he want?" "He asked a lot of questions about your new business venture, how it was structured legally, who owned what, that sort of thing." A cold feeling spread through my chest. Was he looking for a way to challenge it? Quite the opposite, actually. He wanted to make sure it was protected, that no one, including himself, could make a claim against it in the future. This surprised me. "Did he say why?" "He mentioned something about wanting to ensure your legacy was secure, regardless of what happened between the two of you personally." After hanging up, I sat for a long time thinking about this new information. It didn't erase what Christopher had done, but it suggested a level of reflection, of genuine remorse, that I hadn't expected. The next day, a certified letter arrived from Mr. Davies' office. Inside was a legal document in which Christopher formally renounced any claim to the farm or business, now or in the future. Attached was a handwritten note. "Mom, I can't undo what I did. I can only try to ensure it can never happen again. The farm is yours, as it should be. What you build with it is your legacy, not mine. I hope someday you can forgive me enough to let me be part of your life again. But I understand if that day never comes. With love and regret, Christopher." I showed the letter to Eleanor that evening as we sat on the porch watching the sunset. "What do you think?" I asked her. "Is it sincere, or just another manipulation?" Eleanor considered it carefully. "The legal document speaks volumes. He's giving up any potential inheritance, any claim to the land. That's not something someone does as a manipulation. Unless he thinks it will soften me, make me change my will back." "Do you think that's it?" I thought about Christopher's voice on the phone, about what Mr. Davies had reported. "No," I admitted. "I think he might actually be trying to change." "The question is," Eleanor said gently, "does that change anything for you?" It was a question I wasn't ready to answer. My new life was taking shape in ways I had never imagined. The business was thriving. The plans for the sanctuary were progressing. For the first time in decades, I was defining myself not as John's widow or Christopher's mother, but simply as Barbara Williams' entrepreneur, mentor, builder of new dreams. Did I want to complicate that by reopening old wounds, by risking another betrayal? "I need more time," I said finally. "I need to see if this change in him is real and lasting." Eleanor nodded. "That's fair. Real change takes time to prove itself. The next month was a whirlwind of activity. The business continued to grow, with orders coming in from stores in neighboring towns. We hired 2 more women, both in situations similar to Rebecca's, both eager for a fresh start. Ashley secured our first grant, which would fund the construction of 3 small cabins at the edge of the property. Mr. Peterson's crew began work immediately, with a promise to have them ready before winter. One afternoon, as I was reviewing our accounts, I noticed something unusual. An anonymous donation of $5,000 had been made to our newly established foundation account. Could it be Christopher? Eleanor suggested when I showed her. Possibly, though $5,000 is a lot for someone working construction. Unless he sold something valuable, or unless it's his way of beginning to make restitution. The thought hadn't occurred to me that Christopher might see this as a form of repayment for what he had tried to take. It changed the nature of the gesture, made it feel less like generosity and more like obligation. Yet wasn't that appropriate? Didn't actions have consequences? Maybe this was Christopher's way of acknowledging the harm he had done, of trying to balance the scales in some small way. The question of whether to contact him, to acknowledge the donation if it was indeed from him, weighed on my mind for days. In the end, I decided to wait. If Christopher was serious about making amends, this wouldn't be his last gesture. As summer turned to early fall, the farm transformed. The 3 cabins neared completion, simple but comfortable spaces where women could find temporary sanctuary. The commercial kitchen hummed with activity 6 days a week. The garden yielded a bounty that filled our pantry and our product line. "We need a name," Ashley said one evening as we reviewed our marketing materials. "Not just for the products, but for the whole enterprise, the business, the sanctuary, everything." We tossed around ideas for hours. Second chances, new beginnings, women's haven. None felt quite right. "What about the roots of resilience?" Eleanor suggested. "It honors the farm's history while looking toward its new purpose." The name resonated immediately. Roots connecting to the land, to history, to what sustains us. Resilience, the capacity to recover, to grow stronger through adversity. "It's perfect," I said, feeling a swell of emotion. Absolutely perfect. That night, I walked the property alone, touching the trees John and I had planted, feeling the soil that had sustained my family for generations. In the distance, I could see the lights of the new cabins, of the workshop, of the kitchen, points of brightness in the gathering darkness. I thought about roots, how they anchor us, feed us, connect us to what came before. And I thought about resilience, how sometimes we need to be broken open to discover our true strength. As I turned back toward the house, I noticed headlights coming up the drive. A familiar car, Christopher's, moving slowly, hesitantly, as if the driver was unsure of his welcome. I stood very still, watching as the car stopped and the driver's door opened. Christopher stepped out, looking thinner than the last time I'd seen him, his face more weathered. He was dressed in work clothes, not the pressed shirts and designer jeans Lauren had insisted upon. He saw me standing in the yard and froze, clearly uncertain whether to approach or retreat. In that moment of hesitation, I realized something important. The pain of his betrayal hadn't disappeared. It might never completely heal, but it no longer defined me. I had built something new, something meaningful, something that was entirely my own. From that position of strength, perhaps I could finally face the past without being consumed by it. "Christopher," I called, breaking the silence between us. "You might as well come up to the house. It looks like we have some talking to do." Christopher stood awkwardly in the yard, silhouetted against the headlights of his car. In the dim light, I could see how much he had changed in just a few months. His shoulders, once squared in expensive tailored jackets, now hunched slightly forward in a worn work shirt. His hands, previously soft and manicured, were now calloused and rough. Even his stance was different, less entitled, more cautious. "Mom," he said, his voice barely carrying across the distance between us. "I wasn't sure you'd speak to me." "I wasn't sure either," I replied honestly. He took a tentative step forward, then stopped, as if afraid of trespassing. This hesitation from a man who had once walked through this farm as if he owned it struck me deeply. May I come closer? He asked. I nodded and gestured toward the porch. We can sit outside. It's a nice evening. We settled into the rocking chairs, the same ones where he had once sat with Lauren, planning how to take my home from me. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. You've made a lot of changes, Christopher said, looking around at the new structures visible even in the gathering darkness. The farm looks alive. It is alive, I said. More than it's been in years. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. There was too much to say, and neither of us knew where to begin. I got your letter, I finally said. And the legal document. He nodded, his eyes fixed on his rough hands. I meant every word. The farm is yours. It always should have been yours to decide what happens to it. And the anonymous donation to the foundation was that you too. A flash of surprise crossed his face, quickly replaced by something like embarrassment. How did you know? I didn't for certain. But I suspected. He shifted in his chair. It's not much. Nowhere near what we tried to take from you. But it's a start. A start toward what? Christopher. He looked directly at me then, and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen in years, honesty. Unguarded and raw. Toward making things right, if that's even possible. Toward being the son I should have been. I studied his face, looking for signs of the manipulation I had grown so accustomed to detecting, but all I saw was exhaustion, remorse, and a fragile hope. What happened with Lauren? I asked, changing the subject slightly. Christopher's laugh was hollow. She left the day after we came back from the coast, said she didn't sign up for poverty, took everything of value from the apartment and moved in with Patricia. I'm sorry. Don't be. You were right about her. About both of them. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You know what the worst part is? I can't even blame them entirely. I was a willing participant. I convinced myself we were doing what was best for you. But deep down, I knew it was about the money, about what we wanted. His admission hung in the air between us, more honest than anything he had said to me in years. Why did you come here tonight? Christopher, he took a deep breath. I've been driving by the farm almost every evening for weeks, watching the changes, seeing the business grow. I was too much of a coward to approach until now. That doesn't answer my question. I came because, he faltered, then straightened his shoulders. I came to ask if there's any way I could be part of what you're building here. Not as an owner or even as family if you don't want that, but as someone who believes in what you're doing and wants to help. His request caught me off guard. I had expected apologies, perhaps even tears and pleas for forgiveness. But this practical request, this desire to contribute rather than take, was something new. What exactly are you proposing? I've been working construction for the past few months. I've learned a lot about building, repairs, maintenance. I could help with the cabins, with expanding the kitchen, with whatever physical labor you need. I considered his offer, weighing my lingering hurt against the practical reality of our growing enterprise. We can't pay much, I said, testing him. I'm not asking for money, just for a chance to be useful, to do something good for once. The Christopher I had known before, the one influenced by Lauren and Patricia, would never have made such an offer. He would have considered manual labor beneath him, charity work a waste of time. It won't be easy, I warned. People here know what happened. They won't all welcome you with open arms. I don't expect them to. I have to earn their trust, just like I have to earn yours. I rocked slowly, listening to the familiar creak of the chair against the porch boards. In the distance, a whippoorwill called, its haunting song echoing across the fields. You can come on Saturday, I finally said. The goat pen needs repairs. Some of the boards are loose. Relief washed over his face. Thank you. I'll be here at dawn. 8 is fine, I corrected, not quite ready to embrace old routines. This isn't forgiveness. Christopher, it's a trial period. For both of us, he nodded, understanding the boundaries I was setting. That's more than I deserve. As he stood to leave, he paused, his hand on the porch railing. The foundation you're creating for abused women, it's a good thing. Mom, Dad would have been proud. The mention of John, of what he would have thought of all this, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Yes, I managed. I think he would have been. Christopher left as quietly as he had come, his car's taillights disappearing down the long drive. I remained on the porch for a long time afterward, rocking gently, wondering if I had made the right decision. Eleanor found me there an hour later, a blanket in her hands. "You'll catch your death out here," she scolded gently, draping it over my shoulders. "Christopher came by," I told her. She settled into the chair beside me. "I thought that might be his car I saw. What did he want?" I explained his offer, his apparent change, my cautious acceptance. "Do you trust him?" she asked directly. "I don't know yet, but I think I want to try." Eleanor considered this. Trust has to be rebuilt slowly, one small proof at a time. Starting with the goat pen seems appropriate, important enough to matter, but not so critical that betrayal would devastate you again. "That's exactly what I was thinking." She squeezed my hand. "Just remember, Barbara, the woman you are now, the one building this business, this sanctuary, she doesn't need anyone's approval or protection. Whatever happens with Christopher, you'll be okay." Her words reinforced what I already knew, but sometimes forgot. I was no longer the woman who had been left behind while others went to the coast. I was Barbara Williams, creator of the Roots of Resilience, a woman with purpose and power of her own. Saturday arrived with a clear sky and gentle breeze, perfect weather for outdoor work. I was up early, more nervous than I cared to admit. Part of me still feared this might be some elaborate trick, that Christopher wouldn't show up, or worse, would arrive with Lauren and Patricia, ready to renew their attack. But at 8 o'clock sharp, his car pulled into the drive. He was alone, dressed in work clothes and boots, carrying a toolbox that had once belonged to his father. "I found this in my storage unit," he said, holding up the battered red metal box. "Thought it might come in handy." The sight of John's old tools brought a lump to my throat. He'd be glad they're being used again. I led Christopher to the goat pen where several boards had come loose during the last storm. Dr. Bell had warned that predators could get in if they weren't fixed properly. "I'll need to replace these completely," Christopher said, examining the damaged wood. "They're rotted at the base. Do whatever you think is best," I told him. "There's lumber in the shed." I left him to work, returning to the kitchen where Maria and Rebecca were preparing our weekly market orders. Through the window, I could see Christopher measuring, cutting, hammering. His movements were different now, more deliberate, more skilled than I would have expected. "Is that your son?" Rebecca asked, peering out as she stirred a pot of blackberry preserves. "Yes. I heard what happened," she said carefully, "about what they tried to do to you." News traveled fast in small towns. Of course, our story had become common knowledge. "People can change," I said, surprising myself with the words. Rebecca's smile was knowing. Sometimes it takes losing everything to realize what really matters. By noon, Christopher had replaced all the damaged boards and was reinforcing the rest of the pen. I brought him a glass of water and a sandwich, watching as he wiped sweat from his brow. "You've done good work," I said, handing him the food. "Where did you learn to do this?" "At the construction site. The foreman, Martha Davis. She doesn't let anyone get away with shoddy work." He took a grateful sip of water. "She reminds me of you, actually. Doesn't take nonsense from anyone." "Sounds like someone I'd like." Christopher smiled slightly. "She's invited me to join her crew permanently. Says I have a knack for detail work." "Is that what you want to do, construction?" He considered the question. "I never thought so, but there's something satisfying about building things, about seeing the results of your labor at the end of the day." He glanced toward the new cabins. "Like what you're doing here." We ate in companionable silence, the awkwardness of our first reunion somewhat diminished. When he finished, Christopher stood up, brushing crumbs from his jeans. "I should get back to work. I want to finish before dark." "There's no rush," I said. "The goats are safely in the other pen for now." "I know, but I said I'd do this job, and I want to do it right." I watched him return to work, struck by this new version of my son. The Christopher I had known before would have taken breaks whenever he wanted. would have done the minimum required. This Christopher worked steadily until sunset, only stopping when the job was completely finished. "It's done," he said, putting away the last of the tools. "Should hold up even in a bad storm now." "Thank you," I said, genuinely impressed. "You did more than I expected." He looked pleased at the praise, but didn't presume upon it. "I should go. Thank you for letting me help." As he turned to leave, I found myself saying, "There's more work if you want it. The chicken coop needs expanding, and we're thinking of adding a greenhouse for winter vegetables." Christopher paused. "I'd like that. Same time next Saturday." "That would be fine." After he left, Eleanor came over from her house, curiosity written all over her face. "Well, how did it go?" "Better than I expected," I admitted. "He worked hard, did a good job." "And how do you feel about seeing him again?" I considered the question carefully. Cautious, but also hopeful, I suppose. "He seems different." "People can change," Eleanor echoed my earlier words, especially when life gives them a serious wake-up call. Over the next several weekends, Christopher became a regular presence at the farm. He arrived each Saturday morning, worked diligently on whatever project needed attention, and left in the evening without presuming further intimacy than I offered. He built the greenhouse with careful precision. He expanded the chicken coop, adding nesting boxes that the hens preferred to any they'd had before. He repaired fences, reinforced the workshop roof, and helped install shelving in the commercial kitchen. Gradually, the others began to accept his presence. Maria still watched him warily, but Rebecca seemed to understand his journey of redemption. Ashley was politely professional, treating him as just another contributor to our growing enterprise. 3 months into this new arrangement, I received a call from Martha Davis, Christopher's boss at the construction company. "Mrs. Williams, this is Martha Davis from Davis Construction. I hope you don't mind me calling." "Not at all. What can I do for you?" "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about your son, Christopher." My heart sank. Had he been causing problems, reverting to old behaviors? What about him? "He's one of my best workers," she said, surprising me. "Punctual, thorough, respectful, especially with the women on the crew, which isn't always the case in this industry." "I'm glad to hear that. The thing is, we're bidding on a major project, a women's health center in the next county. I'm putting Christopher in charge of the detail work because he has the right touch for it. But it would mean he couldn't come to your farm for a few weekends." "I see." The fact that his boss knew about his weekend work at the farm, that she was considerate enough to call me about the change in schedule, spoke volumes about the life Christopher was building outside our complicated relationship. "He didn't want to let you down," Martha continued. "Said he'd made a commitment to help with your sanctuary project. I told him I'd explain the situation myself." After the call, I sat thinking about what Martha had said. Christopher hadn't mentioned the possibility of this new project, hadn't used it as an excuse to pull back from his commitment to me. Instead, he had apparently been worried about disappointing me. That evening, I called him for the first time since our estrangement. "Mom?" His voice was surprised, concerned. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. Martha Davis called me today." "Oh." A pause. "About the health center project." "Yes, she thinks very highly of you." "She's a good boss, tough but fair." He hesitated. "I was going to tell you this weekend about the scheduling conflict. I didn't want you to think I was backing out of our arrangement." "Christopher, it's work. Important work from the sound of it. Of course you should take the opportunity. You're sure the greenhouse still needs the irrigation system installed, and I know you wanted to start seedlings soon." His concern for the farm's projects, for keeping his word to me, touched something deep inside. This wasn't the Christopher who had tried to steal my life from me. This was someone new, or perhaps someone very old. The son I had raised before ambition and Lauren's influence had corrupted him. "The greenhouse can wait," I assured him. "This sounds like an important opportunity for your career." "It is," he admitted. "Martha thinks if we do well on this project, we could specialize in women's health facilities. There's growing demand and not many construction firms with experience in the specific requirements." I heard the excitement in his voice, the passion for building something meaningful. It reminded me of John when he talked about the farm's future. "I'm proud of you," I said, the words emerging before I could consider them. A long silence followed, so profound I thought we might have been disconnected. "Thank you," he finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "That means more than you know." Winter descended on the farm, bringing with it a natural slowing of activity. The garden lay dormant under a blanket of frost. The fruit trees stood bare against the gray sky. But inside, the roots of resilience hummed with life. The commercial kitchen operated 6 days a week now, producing preserves, baked goods, and herbal products that were shipped to stores throughout the region. Maria had taken on the role of production manager, organizing schedules and ensuring quality standards were maintained. Rebecca oversaw our online presence, working with Ashley to fulfill mail orders and manage our growing social media following. Eleanor, despite her protests about newfangled technology, had become surprisingly adept at tracking inventory through the computer system Ashley had set up. The 3 cabins were completed and already occupied. Jessica, a young mother with 2 small children, had arrived first, fleeing an abusive husband with nothing but a suitcase and fear in her eyes. Diana came next, an older woman whose adult children had been systematically draining her finances and emotionally abusing her, a story that hit uncomfortably close to home for me. The 3rd cabin housed Melissa, barely 20, pregnant and disowned by her family. Each woman contributed to the farm's operations according to her abilities and interests. Jessica had a talent for baking, Diana for gardening, and Melissa for organization and record-keeping. In return, they received safe housing, fair wages, and what many of them needed most, a community that valued them. "We need a proper name for this place," Eleanor said one evening as we sat by the fire. "The business is the roots of resilience, but the sanctuary needs its own identity." We discussed various possibilities, finally settling on Williams Haven, simple, direct, and honoring the farm's history while acknowledging its new purpose. Christopher's weekend visits had resumed after the health center project was completed. Each time he came, he brought something for the Haven building materials, tools, once even a set of comfortable porch chairs he had made himself. "Martha showed me how to do basic carpentry," he explained when I admired the craftsmanship. "Said every builder should know how to make something beautiful as well as functional." His relationship with the women at the Haven evolved slowly. At first, they were wary, especially Jessica, whose fear of men ran deep. But Christopher was patient, respectful, keeping his distance when needed, offering help without insistence. One Saturday, I watched from the kitchen window as he showed Diana how to repair a garden trellis. Their heads were bent together over the work, Christopher demonstrating the proper angle for the nail, Diana nodding in understanding. It was a simple moment, but it represented something profound: trust being rebuilt, skill being shared, dignity being restored. "He's different with them than he was with Lauren," Eleanor observed, following my gaze. "More himself, somehow." She was right. With Lauren, Christopher had always seemed to be performing the successful son, the devoted husband, the man with prospects and plans. With these women who expected nothing from him, who had no use for pretense, he was simply himself, capable, kind, occasionally funny in a quiet way. As winter deepened, our sanctuary project faced its first serious challenge. The county zoning board questioned whether our property could legally house people who weren't family members. A complaint had been filed anonymously, but we all suspected Patricia or Lauren, claiming we were operating an unauthorized boarding house. Mr. Davies represented us at the hearing, arguing passionately that Williams Haven was a charitable enterprise providing emergency housing, not a commercial boarding facility. Ashley presented data on the social impact of our work, the jobs created, the lives improved. But the board seemed unpersuaded until Christopher unexpectedly stood up to speak. "My name is Christopher Williams," he began, his voice steady despite the murmurs his appearance caused. Everyone in the room knew who he was, knew the story of his attempted betrayal. "This farm has been in my family for generations. I grew up here." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "A few months ago, I made a terrible mistake. I tried to take this property from my mother for my own selfish purposes. I thought I knew better than she did what should happen to the land. to her life. The room was completely silent now, every eye fixed on Christopher. I was wrong, he continued. What my mother has created here, this sanctuary for women who have faced situations similar to what I put her through, it's more valuable, more important than anything I had planned. These women aren't boarders. They're not tenants. They're people rebuilding their lives after betrayal, after abuse, after having their power taken away, just as my mother had to do because of me. He turned to look directly at me, his eyes filled with emotion. Williams Haven isn't just a place to stay. It's a place to heal, to learn, to reclaim your life. I know because I've seen it happen, not just for these women, but for my mother as well, and in a different way. For me too. The board voted unanimously to grant us a special use permit, allowing the Haven to continue and even expand if needed. As we left the hearing, Christopher hung back, uncertain of his place in the victory celebration. Thank you, I said, touching his arm lightly. What you said in there, it made a difference. I just told the truth. He hesitated. Mom, there's something I've been wanting to ask you. What is it? The apartment I've been renting in town, the lease is up next month. I've been thinking about finding something closer to the construction site. But also, he took a deep breath, also closer to the farm, to you. The unasked question hung between us. Was he welcome to come home? Was there a place for him in this new life I had built, the old foreman's cottage at the edge of the property? I said slowly. It needs work, but it could be livable with some repairs. Hope flickered across his face. I could fix it up. I have the skills now. It would be a business arrangement, I clarified. You'd pay rent. It would be your place, not just a room in my house. I understand. That's exactly what I want, to be close but independent, to contribute but not intrude. We stood in the winter sunlight, mother and son, finding our way toward a new kind of relationship, one based not on obligation or blood ties alone, but on mutual respect and careful boundaries. We can try it, I said finally. If it doesn't work out, I'll leave without argument, he finished for me. I promise. Over the next month, Christopher spent every free moment working on the cottage. He replaced the roof, insulated the walls, installed new windows and doors. What had been a neglected outbuilding slowly transformed into a comfortable small home. Eleanor watched these developments with cautious optimism. He's putting down roots again, she observed, but different ones this time. Do you think I'm making a mistake, I asked her, letting him back into my life this way? I think you're giving him a chance to prove the change is real, she said thoughtfully, and giving yourself a chance to heal the relationship on your terms, not his. That's not a mistake. It's wisdom. The day Christopher moved into the cottage, I brought over a housewarming gift, a quilt I had made from scraps of fabric collected over the years, including pieces of his childhood clothes, John's old shirts, even material from the curtains that had hung in his nursery. Something old made new, I explained as he ran his fingers over the varied textures. Like us, maybe? Thank you. He laid the quilt carefully on the simple bed. It's perfect. As I turned to leave, he cleared his throat. Mom, there's something I want to show you. From a cardboard box, he pulled out a framed photograph I hadn't seen in years, John and me on our wedding day, laughing as we cut the cake, our young faces filled with hope and joy. I found it in storage, Christopher said. Thought it belonged here at the farm, with you. The gesture, so simple yet so meaningful, brought tears to my eyes. He would have liked what you're doing now, I said softly. The construction work, the helping others. He always said you had good hands for building. I wish I had listened to him more. Christopher set the photograph on the small table by his bed. To both of you, we all have regrets. Christopher, the question is what we build from them. That spring brought new growth to Williams Haven. The greenhouse Christopher had built flourished with seedlings for the garden. The kitchen produced new product lines, herb-infused oils, specialty vinegars, seasonal preserves that quickly gained a devoted following. Our sanctuary expanded as well. 2 more cabins were constructed, providing homes for women who had heard about the Haven through word of mouth. A community garden took shape, with each resident responsible for her own plot. Christopher, now firmly established in his cottage, became the haven's unofficial maintenance manager, teaching the women basic repair skills while respecting their space and independence. "He's good with Jessica's kids," Eleanor remarked one Sunday as we watched Christopher patiently showing 5-year-old Tommy how to hammer a nail into a birdhouse they were building together. "Has a natural way with children." It was true. The Christopher who had once been so focused on appearances, on status, now spent hours sitting on the ground helping small children build things. His expensive clothes replaced by worn jeans and flannel shirts. His manicured hands now calloused and capable. "He's become more like John," I said, realizing the truth of it as I spoke. His father's son after all. One evening in late spring, as I was closing up the kitchen, Christopher knocked on the door. He looked nervous, a folded paper in his hand. "Mom, do you have a minute? There's something I'd like to discuss with you." We sat at the small table where I did the account books, the day's last light streaming through the windows. "Martha Davis has offered me a partnership in her construction business," he said, pushing the paper toward me. "She's expanding, taking on more projects focused on women's facilities, health centers, shelters, community spaces. She wants me to lead that division." I scanned the offer letter, impressed by both the opportunity and the confidence it represented. "This is wonderful, Christopher. A real testament to how far you've come. It would mean more responsibility, more hours sometimes," he continued, "but also more stability, better pay. You've earned it." He took a deep breath. "There's something else I wanted to talk about, something I've been thinking about for a while." From his pocket, he withdrew an envelope and handed it to me. Inside was a bank check for $50,000, exactly the amount he had tried to transfer from my account the day this all began. "What is this?" I asked, though I already knew. "It's what I tried to take from you, the cattle money. I've been saving every extra dollar from my paychecks. It took longer than I hoped, but it's all there." I stared at the check, emotions washing over me in waves: surprise, vindication, and something deeper that felt like healing. "I don't need the money," I said truthfully. The business was thriving, the farm more profitable than it had been in years. "I know, but I need to return it. For me as much as for you." His eyes held mine steadily. Taking that money was where it all started, the betrayal, the lies, everything. Returning it feels like closing that chapter properly. I nodded, understanding what this gesture meant to him. It wasn't just money. It was atonement, concrete evidence of change. "Thank you," I said, accepting the check. "This means a lot." "What will you do with it?" I thought for a moment. "Add it to the Haven's endowment fund. Help ensure this place continues, even after I'm gone." Christopher smiled. "Dad would like that." As he stood to leave, I was struck by how different he looked from the son who had left me behind to go to the coast just a year ago. This Christopher moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced his worst self and chosen a different path. "I'm proud of you," I told him for the second time. "Not just for the job or the money, but for the man you're becoming." He ducked his head, still uncomfortable with praise. "I'm trying. Every day." A year had passed since Christopher's first hesitant visit back to the farm. The roots of resilience had grown beyond anything I had imagined that day when Eleanor and I first discussed starting a small home-cooked meal business. We now employed 15 women, most of whom had come through Williams Haven seeking sanctuary and finding purpose. Our products were sold in stores across 3 counties, and our online business shipped nationwide. The sanctuary had expanded to 7 cabins, each one a temporary home for women rebuilding their lives. One evening, as I was reviewing our quarterly accounts, I realized something remarkable. We had reached the point where expansion was not just possible, but necessary. The demand for our products exceeded our production capacity. The waiting list for the Haven grew longer each month. But expansion meant investment, more equipment, more space, more staff. It meant taking risks I wasn't sure I was ready for at 74 years old. Eleanor, practical as always, suggested we consult with Ashley. She understands the business side better than either of us. Let's see what she thinks is possible. Ashley arrived the next day with spreadsheets, market analyses, and boundless enthusiasm. "The timing is perfect," she declared, spreading papers across the dining room table. "Your brand recognition is strong, your customer loyalty is exceptional, and there's growing interest in socially responsible businesses like yours. But the investment required," I began, looking at the figures she had calculated. "Is significant," she acknowledged, "but not prohibitive. With your current profit margins and projected growth, you could secure funding through traditional loans. Or," she hesitated, "you could consider taking on a partner." A partner. The idea had never occurred to me. The roots of resilience had always been mine and Eleanor's, our vision, our effort, our legacy. Someone who could contribute capital, expertise, perhaps even labor, Ashley explained, in exchange for a percentage of the business. The conversation stayed with me for days afterward. A partner would make expansion more feasible, would share the burden of decision-making that sometimes felt heavy on my aging shoulders. But it would also mean sharing control of something deeply personal. I was still wrestling with the idea when Christopher came by one Saturday afternoon. He had just finished installing a new water heater in one of the cabins and stopped at the main house for a glass of iced tea. "You seem preoccupied," he observed as we sat on the porch. "Everything okay?" I found myself telling him about the expansion dilemma, about Ashley's suggestion of taking on a partner. "It makes business sense," I concluded. "But this isn't just a business to me. It's something more personal." Christopher listened thoughtfully, asking intelligent questions about the financial projections, the market potential, the risks involved. His business acumen, once directed toward taking from me, now offered clarity and insight. "What if," he said slowly, setting down his glass, "what if I could help, not as family, but as a partner?" I looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" "I've been thinking about something for a while now." He straightened in his chair, suddenly formal. "I'd like to propose a business partnership, not as a son who inherits, but as a partner who contributes work and earns his share. The echo of our past of inheritance, of entitlement, of taking without earning hung between us. But this was different. This was Christopher asking to build something together, not to claim what was mine." "What would you contribute?" I asked carefully. "Physical labor, deliveries, building a larger kitchen if you decide to expand." He listed, "And something more important, respect for your leadership." "And what would you want in return? A fair salary, a share of the profits if the business grows." He paused. "And maybe someday, if I earn it, for you to call me your son again." The nakedness of this last request caught me off guard. Throughout our careful reconciliation, we had maintained certain boundaries. I managed the farm and business. He contributed labor and expertise. I was Barbara. He was Christopher. The words mom and son had been largely absent from our new vocabulary. "This would be a formal arrangement," he continued, filling the silence. "A proper contract, reviewed by lawyers, with clear expectations and responsibilities on both sides. And if things go wrong, if we fight again, then we part ways as partners who didn't work out, but not as enemies. And if it works," his smile was tentative, "then we build something together, something we can both be proud of." It was a risky proposal for both of us. For me, it meant welcoming Christopher deeper into something I had built from the ashes of his betrayal. For him, it meant committing to a business whose very purpose was helping women like those he had once been willing to discard. "Give me time to think about it," I said. "This isn't a small decision." "All the time you need," he replied, rising to leave. "I'm not going anywhere." That night, I discussed the proposal with Eleanor. We sat in her small kitchen, the same place where I had first come seeking refuge after discovering the betrayal. "What do you think?" I asked after explaining Christopher's offer. Eleanor considered carefully, stirring her tea. "I think he's not the same man who betrayed you. But I also think you're not the same woman who let herself be betrayed. Do you think I should try? I think you should do what makes you happy, but with your eyes wide open." I thought about all that had happened over the past year, the business we had built, the women we had helped, the community we had created. And I thought about Christopher's journey from entitled son to humble worker, from betrayer to ally. 2 weeks later, I gave him my answer. I accept the partnership, but with very clear conditions. Whatever you say. A written contract, a review every 6 months. And at the first sign of disrespect, it's all over. I accept. Good. Then we start on Monday. Christopher's face remained composed, but his eyes revealed his emotion. Thank you for this chance. Barbara, I won't fail you again. I studied him for a moment, this man who had once been my little boy, who had then become my greatest disappointment, and who now stood before me as something new, a potential partner, a fellow builder of something worthwhile. Christopher, I said, the word deliberate. You can call me Mom again. You've earned it. For the first time in almost 2 years, I saw him cry, but these were tears of gratitude, not manipulation. Thank you, Mom. I won't fail you again. I know, because if you do, this time there won't be a third chance. I know, and I promise you won't need one. 3 years have passed since Christopher and I became partners. 3 years in which we have built something that neither of us could have imagined when everything fell apart. The business grew beyond our wildest dreams. Barbara's Kitchen now has 2 locations, one in town and one in the city. We employ 15 people, all women from the area who needed decent work. Ashley, the young woman who helped us with marketing, is now our general manager. Williams Haven has become a model sanctuary, with 12 cabins and a comprehensive program that includes housing, job training, legal assistance, and emotional support. Women come from 3 states away, seeking the fresh start we offer. Many stay in the area afterward, building new lives rooted in the skills and confidence they gained here. But the most important thing is not the numbers in the bank accounts. The most important thing is what we built as a family. Christopher kept every one of his promises. He works from 5 in the morning until night. He handles deliveries. He supervises the construction of new facilities, and never, not once, has he questioned my decisions as the boss. You know what I like most about working with you, he told me recently as we were loading boxes for a large delivery. That I finally see you for who you really are. Not as the mom who took care of me, but as the smart and strong woman you always were. Those words filled my heart in a way I hadn't felt in years. Eleanor is still my partner and my best friend. She now officially lives in the house with me. We turned the guest room into her personal bedroom, and at night, we sit on the porch planning new projects while we drink herbal tea we grow in our garden. Can you imagine if they had told us 5 years ago that we would be successful businesswomen in our 70s? She says, laughing. I would have told you that you were crazy. And you would have been wrong. The program to help abused women became a real foundation. We have a small shelter at the back of the property where women fleeing abusive situations can stay while they rebuild their lives. We teach them skills, help them with legal advice, and support them until they can stand on their own. Yesterday, a young woman arrived with 2 small children. Her husband had threatened to take the children away if she left him. The same threat Lauren had used on me, but with my own resources. Can I really stay here without paying anything? She asked me with eyes full of fear. Not only can you stay, but you're going to learn to do something you like that will give you financial independence. And when you're ready to leave, we'll help you find your own place. Why are you doing this for me? You don't know me. Because all women deserve the opportunity to live with dignity. And because someone taught me that sometimes you have to be very brave to save your own life. This morning, as I was preparing dough for Tuesday's pies, the phone rang. It was Mr. Davies. Mrs. Williams, I'm calling to give you some news. Good or bad? Very good. Your foundation just received an anonymous donation of $50,000. I sat in the nearest chair. $50,000, the same amount Christopher had tried to steal years ago. The same amount he had already repaid once. Do you know who made it? I asked, though I suspected. I can't tell you, but I have my suspicions. That afternoon, when Christopher arrived from work, I confronted him. It was you who donated the money to the foundation. He turned red, just like when he was a child and I caught him doing something he shouldn't. How did you know? Because it's exactly 50,000, the same amount you tried to steal, the same amount you already paid back. It's not all the money I owe you, but it's a start. Christopher, that money was for you, too. You're my partner. No, Mom, that money was my way of closing a circle, of turning something bad into something good. I got up and hugged him, a real deep hug, full of the love that had been stored away for years of pain. I'm proud of you, son, and I'm proud to be your son. This afternoon, as the sun sets over the mountains that have seen my whole life, I sit in the rocking chair on the porch, reflecting on these last few years. The house is full of life again. I can hear laughter from the kitchen where the girls are finishing up cleaning after a day's work. I can hear voices from the shelter where the women we are helping are reading stories to their children. I can hear the sound of the goats and chickens in the pen that Christopher repaired with his own hands. Eleanor comes out of the kitchen with 2 cups of hot chocolate, as she does every night. "What are you thinking about?" she asks. That my husband was right. About what? He once told me that women are like trees, that we can survive the most terrible droughts, but that when the rains come, we bloom more beautifully than before. He was a wise man. Yes, and I think he would have liked to see what I've become. Christopher arrives in his truck, tired but smiling. He now lives in a small house he bought in town, but he comes to have dinner with us almost every night. "How was your day?" I ask him. "Perfect. We delivered everything on time. The clients were happy, and Mrs. Davis offered me a bigger contract for next month." "And are you going to accept it?" "Only if you agree. I don't want it to affect our business. That's the difference. Now he asks me, now he respects my opinions. Now he understands that we are partners, not boss and employee. I think the business can manage on its own for a few weeks. Thanks, Mom." The 3 of us have dinner in the dining room, talking about plans to expand the shelter and maybe open a 3rd branch. Ashley wants us to explore the possibility of selling our products online throughout the country. "Can you imagine, Barbara," Eleanor says, "women all over America eating your pies?" "Our pies," I correct her. We built this together. After dinner, Christopher goes to his house, and Eleanor retires to her room. I stay on the porch a while longer, looking at the stars that shine brighter than ever. I think about the woman I was 5 years ago, a woman who had become invisible in her own home, a woman who had lost her voice, her strength, her dignity, a woman who was so used to giving that she had forgotten she also had the right to receive. That woman died the day I decided to freeze the bank accounts. She died when I chose to defend myself instead of remaining a victim. She died when I understood that true love is not sacrificing your dignity for others, but respecting your own and teaching others to respect it too. In her place, this woman was born, an entrepreneur, a leader, a protector of other women, a mother to a son who finally understands what respect means. The phone rings one last time before I go to bed. It's Ashley. "Mrs. Williams, I'm sorry to bother you so late, but I wanted to give you some news." "What happened?" "A national magazine just called. They want to do an article on women entrepreneurs over 70. You are their first choice. An article about me, about you, and about everything you've built. They say your story is inspiring for thousands of women who feel trapped in their own lives." After hanging up, I walk to the garden where my roses are, the same ones I planted 20 years ago to teach Christopher about the thorns that protect beauty. I cut a white rose, the same variety I cut the night he left. But this time, I don't cut it with pain. I cut it with gratitude. Gratitude for having had the courage to say enough. Gratitude for having found the strength to build a new life. Gratitude for having learned that it is never too late to bloom. I look up at the starry sky and whisper the words my husband told me in our last year together. "A legacy is not a monument, Margaret. It is a map you leave for others to find their own way." I finally understand what he meant. My legacy is not the businesses I built or the money I earned. My legacy is the women I helped find their strength. It's the son who learned to respect. It's the living proof that it is never too late to rescue your own life. I go into the house and turn off the lights one by one. Tomorrow will be another day full of work, of projects, of women who need help and hope, and I will be ready. because I am finally who I was always meant to be. Barbara, simply Barbara, and that is more than enough. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below.